Welcome to the Local Pulse on HBC. I'm Dave Dicke, and today we're joined by Marcia Ratliff from Engage Winona. She is the executive director there, and it's nice to have you with us today, Marcia.
Thanks, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's talk a little bit about what brought you to Winona and kind of what made you want to make Winona your home.
Oh, yes. I love that question because everyone has a Winona story. And mine actually starts with being a college freshman here about 15 years ago. I was kind of growing up in the St. Cloud, Minnesota area and looking at all the different state of Minnesota schools and really fell in love with Winona State, mostly because of the natural environment. But I was also going for English and I was really excited about the English department. They've got a lot of great professors there and seemed really having a lot of like supports for young writers, like a literary magazine and things like that that you don't see in every undergraduate university. So I was excited about that. And then, came here, really fell in love with the community, started to feel like it was kind of a place where I could see myself living as an adult. So after college, actually, I met my spouse in college, which is a very cute story that happens to a lot of people as well. And after college, we were kind of like, do we stay in Winona? Do we go somewhere else? What do we do with our lives? And so we ended up joining the Peace Corps and going and serving in South Africa for 2 years,
Wow.
from 2016 to 2018. And I remember a point about halfway through our service when we were thinking about what to do after the Peace Corps. Some people move to DC, some people go to grad school or go to international development work. And we just really felt like the place where we wanted to do our community work was Winona. And we felt like that was the home that we missed the most when we were overseas. So it kind of then became our landing spot when we came back. And then I think the pandemic, in addition, kind of cemented to us like if we're going to weather any kind of storm, Winona is the place that we want to do that. And so at this point, we're in it for life. Um, I hope that I don't need to move again. And yeah, so I've been here about 13 years total, because that's minus the 2 years that we were in the Peace Corps.
Wow. So your background with the Peace Corps is pretty rich. You've got journalism background. You did the Peace Corps. So how did those experiences shape your approach to community engagement?
Yes. Oh, such a great question. Yeah, they are really integral to my approach to community engagement. So, as you mentioned, my first job right out of college, actually got it while I was still in school, was as a reporter for the Winona Daily News. And so I got a really firsthand look at the community of Winona. And it's kind of like I describe it to people as sort of like a blank check to ask anyone any question, because we were really encouraged to kind of follow our own curiosity and just figure out what was going on and kind of what stories we wanted to cover, what was interesting to us. And so that was really good for me, I think, to kind of get me out of my shell and get me out of kind of a campus lens that's pretty common for college students. You're oriented around the campus. So that kind of broadened my lens out into the community as a whole. And I started to get a sense for how people get things done, how people collaborate, how people stick things out over a long period of time. Because community work is often done at a marathon pace, and it's rarely done solo. It's
Mm.
by nature, you have to do it with other people and you have to negotiate and collaborate, and there's kind of a give and take with it. So kind of having a front row seat to that really gave me a good sense of what are those conditions for community, those like essential conditions that you want to see, and then how those conditions can be either fostered, or how they can be challenged by external forces or internal forces that kind of get in the way or create barriers for folks. So based on that experience, then going into the Peace Corps, I kind of came in with a background of if you want to get to know a community, be curious and go to things. And that was actually the Peace Corps advice as well. And I think that stuck with me and shaped who I am as an adult. Because Peace Corps volunteers In my sector, we were in education sector, so we had a day job. My day job was teaching English and health to sixth and seventh graders at a really rural school with like about 1,000 kids and
Wow.
one working photocopier. So like it's a really rich in community, but really poor in resources area of the country. And so what they said was, or the trainers at the Peace Corps said, for your first year, just work your day job and go to as many community things as you can. If you get invited to church, go to church. If you get invited to a funeral, go, weddings, all these things. Like just be in your community and that's your job. And don't try to do any extra sports camps or extra little things that you might want to try or might be motivated to do. Just be in your community. And that was initially really difficult for me because I'm a go-getter, I'm a doer. I was like, oh, we could be doing so much more. I want to get this started. I want to do this and this and this. But it really ended up being the right thing to do to wait. Because then after having gone through that year and been in the community so visibly, then in the second year when I started an HIV prevention camp and kind of got a school library running, those things were so much easier to do because people in the community knew me and trusted me. They're like, "Oh yeah, you're Marcia. You've been to our funerals. You've come to church with us. Like we know who you are and we trust you." And that was like really powerful. And so I brought that back to where if you want to do something in community, don't start by just stomping in and being like, I have the best ideas and I know exactly what we need and we're going to change this and solve these things. It's really coming in with that cultural humility to say, I'm not the expert here. I'm not the expert in this context. And I'm going to spend time with people who are so I can learn from them, build trust with them, build relationships. And then we'll figure out a path together. And it may or may not be the path that I thought I was going to go down. It may or may not need to be solved at all, but it's really kind of that process of starting with listening, and then moving into action in partnership and collaboration instead of action by yourself.
So then how did you find your way to get involved with Engage Winona?
Yeah, so Engage Winona actually started kind of right before I left for the Peace Corps. So 2016, it was a group of volunteers from Winona that went to a Blandin leadership training with the Blandin Foundation, and they kind of were supposed to come back from that training. It's like a week-long retreat. They're supposed to come back with a community project. And so the project that they wanted to come back with that year was kind of similar to my path of saying, we don't really know what Winona needs, but what we want to do is ask. And we want to get curious and we want to see what is our community's vision for its future. And so then their idea was to come back and do some really broad community listening, and reach out to people that had never been asked before what was their vision for the community, and just do a really good job of a broad representative group of people being involved. So I actually, as a young 23-year-old, went to one of the first Engage Winona conversations, like right before I left. And I remember feeling so excited about it and so kind of sad to leave. I was like, I'm leaving right when this is getting started. And I'm finally feeling like I'm not the only 23-year-old that's still in Winona, like like
Yeah.
there's a future for me and there's other people that care about the future of this community and have a vision for it being the best that it can possibly be. So that kind of lit my fire. But of course, we obviously still went. And then while we were in South Africa, then the founder, Brian Verding, quit his day job at the newspaper, and then became kind of the full-time executive director. And so I was kind of watching that from afar on Facebook, jealously, being like, oh, such cool things are going on in Winona while I'm gone, with my like very limited cell service. It would take like 5 minutes to load. But I really wanted to come back and be part of it. So I knew right away when I get back to Winona, that's the thing I want to be involved in. And so then in 2018, when we came back to town, I kind of got involved right away as a volunteer, just helping out at different community events and getting involved as like a note taker, helping out with some of the promotional things. At the time, it was a really volunteer. There was only one paid staff member, so it really depended a lot on its volunteers. So I was happy to help out with that. And then in 2021, I actually joined the board of Engage Winona. And then that was also the year that the founder stepped down and moved on to a different job. And then the position was open, and several people encouraged me to apply. And I did, and here I am. So,
It's awesome. And for people that are watching and maybe they're not, maybe they've heard about Engage Winona but aren't sure what it's all about, can you kind of give us a synopsis of what is Engage Winona?
absolutely. Yeah. So, we're about creating stronger communities and doing that by igniting community participation. So that shift from I'm on the sidelines or I'm a bystander to I am actively involved in shaping my community. So we really believe that community is not something that's created by other people. It's not something that's imposed upon us by government. It's something that we create, and it's an action word. And so engagement on is really about getting more people involved in shaping their community, and kind of providing support and building a container or creating the conditions to make that possible. So we look at like a continuum of disengagement, maybe people who don't really know what's going on, maybe felt left out, maybe tried to get involved in the past, but it didn't work out, or they're just kind of checked out, all the way up to people that are already involved, but maybe need some support in getting things done. Because as I mentioned before, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and you can hit roadblocks along the way. So kind of looking at that whole continuum of folks in our community and then designing programs that are going to meet folks in each group where they're at and kind of help them take that next step. So if you're someone that's new to town or doesn't really feel like super connected, maybe that next step is coming to a block party or just meeting your neighbor, and that's that next step for you. And on the other end, if you're someone who's been around doing things for a while, but you're like, why isn't anyone coming to my community events? Maybe your next step is, okay, let me think about my relationship building a little bit more. How do I get more people on board and how do I build a team? So there's a lot of different levels of skills involved, but we want to help everyone kind of take that next step. And ultimately, more people being involved in our community means that our community is stronger, and that we're not missing out on the folks that live here. So that's in a nutshell what we do.
Is there a story you can share that kind of captures the impact that Engage Winona has on the community?
Yeah. Yes. There's so many stories. And I don't want to tell someone else's story that's not mine to tell either. But there's a couple of instances where, at least in the early days of Engage Winona, when we were doing that big community listening work, we heard a lot of feedback of people telling us, wow, no one ever asked us what our vision was or took the time to come and listen to us, and that means a lot. And so just that right there is a shift for people from having a sense that, oh, I don't really have a voice or no one cares what I think. The shift is, oh, wait, I do have something to say and it is valued in my community. And so I don't want to underestimate that subtle shift because that's kind of the beginning of being a full citizen or being a full participant in the community, is to say that you do have something to bring and we all have a role to play. So we've heard a lot of echoes of that. I think we also we have a leadership development program called Lived Experience Leaders. It's a cohort that runs for 9 months, and it kind of brings in community members who might have faced a barrier in the community in the past or gone through a challenge. Maybe they've come out of addiction, they're in recovery. Maybe they've faced a mental health challenge. Maybe they've had a tough family life. Just different things that sometimes affect how people show up in community. And oftentimes those folks, they have a lot of expertise in what it's like to live their life and to go through that journey. But as a culture, we don't necessarily value that expertise the same way that we value letters behind someone's name, like an MBA or,
Yeah.
PhD. So our Lived Experience Leaders program is designed to support folks who may not necessarily have another leadership pathway, and come alongside them and value that lived experience and help them find some kind of community role or place to plug in that's going to utilize their unique perspective and the things that they've gained along their journey. And so that's where we get a lot of really cool stories that we share in our annual reports and in our videos and stuff like that. But like folks who, for example, may have come out of addiction and felt like, well, I'm not sure if I have anything to offer in this community because this is the community where I committed all my crimes and did my jail time. Like, I don't really know what my role is here. And to watch that person shift from, I don't really know what to do, I don't know if I belong here, to, wow, I'm going to get involved and I'm going to volunteer with this group and I'm going to stick around and I'm going to share my story and I'm going to make a difference. Like, that is tremendous.
Mhm.
And that happens far more often in our programs than I think people realize. So that's super exciting.
That's cool. We are at our midway point, so we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk more with Marcia Ratliff from Engage Winona right after this.
It's Halloween. The chills never stop. HBC TV 25 is serving up a marathon of spine-tingling, hair-raising classic B horror films noon to midnight on October 31st. From creepy creatures to haunted houses, it's a fright test you won't want to miss. So grab your popcorn, lock the doors, and keep the lights on. Noon to midnight this Halloween, only on HBC TV 25.
Welcome back to the Local Pulse. I'm Dave Dicke, and we're talking with Marcia Ratliff from Engage Winona. And we're talking about the program in general. And one thing, Marcia, that you talk a lot about is belonging to the community and just belonging. And what does that look like in Winona, to belong?
Yeah, well, I think everyone has their own definition of what that looks like. So it's not something that we necessarily maintain a definition for, but honestly ask the community to co-define with us. And it's often a really generative topic of conversation to talk about what are the things that make you feel like you're part of a community, that you have a role to play, and that you're welcomed or that you're wanted there. Like those are some of the things that we ask about when we're trying to kind of co-define belonging. And a lot of times what it comes down to for folks is feeling like um, they both have something to give and that they can receive help or that they can receive the gifts of community back to themselves. And so sometimes like it's hard to do both sides of that. Like some of us, it's really hard to accept help or to say, look, I could use some support right now from my community, or I don't know where to turn. We're running out of food. I need help. Or even just, hey, I need someone to talk to. I'm a little bit lonely. We all come through times in our lives where we need a little bit more help than we did in the past. So I became a mom about 3 years ago, and that was definitely a learning curve of like, you are not going to be able to do all this yourself. You cannot be a superhuman, and you're going to need to ask people to bring you food and come help you. And like hold your baby for you while you use the bathroom, just like these basic things. So that taught me a lot about being in community and that sense of belonging is like, do you have people you can ask and can you ask? But then also you have something to give too. And I think that's also often what pulls people from the sidelines and into participation in community is that sense of like being the solution that you want to see. If you want to see our community be more supportive of youth, maybe you become a volunteer with a youth serving organization. If you want to see less litter on the streets, maybe you start a litter pickup group with your neighbors and you just play fun music and you make it happen. Like those kinds of things also really contribute to what people call social ties or social capital that make people feel connected to a place. It's kind of like playing that caregiving role, but then also allowing yourself to be cared for by your community.
I know you've got a lot of things coming up. Let's see if we can't hit a few of those before we run out of time today. What what's your next program on your calendar?
Absolutely. So we've actually got a really exciting one going on right now. And it's a partnership with the state of Minnesota called Story Collective. And the idea is to gather stories from ordinary people Or if you're extraordinary, of course, you can participate too, but there's no requirement. But just folks in the community that want to share a story about their life. It could be something that was good. It could be a challenge that they faced, just kind of whatever they want to share. And what we're doing is gathering those stories, and they're going to become part of a big, what's called qualitative data pool, which is basically kind of a distinction from a statistic versus a story. So a statistic might say 1 in 5 families can't afford childcare. That's a statistic. I don't know if it's true or not. That's just an example. A story might be I had to quit my job and stay home with my baby because I couldn't find childcare. So then we know a little bit more about what's going on with those 1 in 5 people. It gives us a more well-rounded picture of who they are and some context for why they are in that category. And essentially the idea is that qualitative data and quantitative, we kind of need both kinds to be able to make decisions as a community and as a state in terms of what we can do together to support each other. So that's the goal of the project, is just to gather stories of ordinary life from folks. We're collecting them through the end of November. We've got some public events in October where people can either drop in at Engage Winona at 119 East 3rd Street and leave a story with us, or we've got some supported virtual sessions. So if you're like, I need a little bit of support, I don't really know what I'm doing here, you can come on Zoom with us and we'll walk you through it. And folks can also just participate anytime on their own time. It only takes about 15 minutes. It's just like a quick survey. And it kind of asks you, what's your story? And then to tell a little bit more about your story and what it means. So it's really, really a unique project. And we're hoping to get at least 150 stories from the Winona area over the next couple months. So we definitely want to see folks show up and share stories.
Uh, One thing that kind of came into my mind, I know you have what you call the kitchen table.
Mhm.
Can you talk about that a little bit and explain what that's all about? Because just seems like such a simple thing, but I know it's probably not.
Yeah, yeah, a kitchen table. So the kitchen table program it's one of our programs kind of under the umbrella of our organization. And the idea is that a lot of times people come together around kitchen tables, and that's where some community problem solving happens, or community support work, community service, like kind of idea sharing or just social support. A lot of times it's people sitting around a kitchen table with cups of coffee. And so that's kind of why we named it that. The program is specifically focused on folks that have lived through homelessness or housing instability in the Winona area. And so they're involved as a leadership cohort or leadership board that kind of helps look at our housing landscape in Winona and identify what are some areas where we as a community actually have the power to make a difference, and to kind of fish upstream of homelessness and look at the root causes and kind of address some of those crises before they pop up. So, excuse me. So we've engaged with a group of people, again, like I mentioned, the leadership team, and then they do quite a bit of advocacy. So talking with local council members, and also state representatives and senators, and then doing local education on housing policy, and just kind of getting the conversation going. Because housing in Winona, it's actually not that unique from the rest of the state. A lot of communities across the state of Minnesota are running into the same challenges where there's simply not enough vacant apartments or houses for sale for the amount of people that want to live here. And so then you run into issues of people kind of either getting priced out of the home that their family needs, and then maybe having to move on or getting evicted, and just kind of there's a snowball effect if you don't have enough housing available. So what we've been doing is raising some awareness around that, but also helping people not be stuck there. Because sometimes we get a lot of stuckness coming back of like, oh, what can we do? We don't have enough money, we don't have enough land, we just can't do anything. And that's a very real feeling, but there are things that communities can do. There's some cool things that communities across Minnesota have done together. They don't all cost a ton of tax money. And it's really kind of we all benefit when we increase the amount of housing in our community. So we kind of talk about some of those things as well.
So do you have any advice for someone who maybe wants to get involved in their community, but just doesn't know where they should start? So
Oh,
I think
yes.
I think
Yeah.
sometimes people just they look around and say, well, this I can do this. I mean, there's so many opportunities, and then but there's also people that you kind of mentioned. There's maybe they feel a little helpless in doing something, and then it just becomes inactivity. But so how do people get motivated, and where can they start?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think start where you are, is the first thing I would say. So thinking about what are those things that are closest to what you're currently doing, that don't require you to suddenly completely change your life, right? Going from I'm not involved at my kid's school at all to I'm going to be PTA president. Like you don't need to do that. But maybe start with getting to know another parent in your kid's class or just going to a PTA meeting to see what it's like. So kind of doing those, dipping your toe in can kind of help you get a sense for what are the things you do like to do, and maybe what are the things that you're like, this is great, but this is for someone else. And you don't necessarily know unless you put yourself out there. But starting with those things that are closest to where you are, and that make the most sense. And often it's just social connections, like doing a couple things instead of doing them alone, looking for some people that are doing that thing, or looking for someone in your neighborhood that you might be able to walk with, or just those kinds of things can sometimes help um, light the fire and get that first step under you. I think the other thing that I would encourage folks to do is to come check out Engage Winona's programs. So we have a lot of workshops that are open to the community. We always have snacks. And the workshops kind of walk through different aspects of community work, and kind of give you an opportunity to mess around with some ideas in your head, maybe talk with some folks at your table. And a lot of times talking with people helps you think through what you might want to do and just kind of bounce your ideas. It just helps to have someone else to bounce ideas off of.
We're getting just about to the end of our time here, Marcia, but can you just tell us a little bit about what's next for Engage Winona?
Yeah, so the future at Engage Winona is always exciting. We always have a lot of new ideas that we're interested in trying out, and expanding into. So one of the things that we're actually piloting this year, so piloting means we're just trying it out for the first time, is a youth program called Beyond Civics. We're doing that in partnership with Civic Bridgers, which is a statewide organization that kind of promotes youth civic engagement. So looking at kind of 14 to 24-year-olds, kind of those younger people who may need more support to get involved. And so it's actually really exciting to be able to do that because we haven't done a youth-specific program yet. So we're piloting it at the high school and we're really excited about that. So we hope to continue to be able to offer that. Another thing that we're piloting this fall is called Run for Rural. And that's another partnership program with the West Central Initiative Foundation. And they're a foundation nonprofit based in West Central Minnesota. And so they created a program about encouraging people to strengthen their communities through local public leadership. So what we're doing is promoting people to learn kind of like what's involved, what is public leadership, how do I do it, how do I find the reason to run, and how do I build local support. And that program is nonpartisan, so it's focused not on Republicans and Democrats, it's actually just focused on local leadership. And it's open to anyone. And so we're really excited about that. It's been really well received. And I think folks really see the need, especially across our region.
And if people want to learn more about Engage Winona, is your website the best spot for them to visit?
It sure is. Yeah. So if you go to engagewinona.org, you can see our events page that has all of our upcoming events. You can also sign up for our email newsletter. We send it only once per month, so it's not a spam. And it tells you everything that we have coming up.
Marcia, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Dave. It was my pleasure.
And we want to thank you for joining us today as well here on the Local Pulse. And we'll see you next time here on HBC.